Hello, I'm Brigantia Blackbird of the Blackbird Grimoire. Welcome back to Pagan Tales. We are carrying on with the theme of May of divine couples, and today we are looking at the train wreck of Jupiter and Juno, and this should also give you a few ideas about their Greek counterparts of Zeus and Hera, who share similar but not exactly the same lore. So buckle up, my dear. Let's get into these two. Now, Jupiter and Juno, they were considered to be principal deities of the Roman state for obvious reasons. They were the rulers of the gods, and so naturally, the Roman state, as an extension of that divine structure, would also be honoring these two. They were both considered to be defenders of Rome. Jupiter was strongly associated with oaths, and Juno was strongly associated with all things to do with marriage. So let's talk about the Roman family tree that's actually a family bush. It is true that Jupiter and Juno are full brother and sister. Their parents are Saturn and Ops. Their siblings are Neptune, Pluto, Ceres, and Vesta. Now, here's interesting. We have a bit of a deviation. We have Juno's children, who are Mars, Vulcan, Bellona, Lucina, and Juventus. And then we have Jupiter's children, Mars, Vulcan, Bellona, Angelos, Lucina, Juventus, Minerva, and Hercules. So a little bit of disparity there. So you can see, like Zeus, Jupiter wasn't exactly faithful to his wife and queen, and of course that did cause problems. And a word with the dearly close family relations of this particular family of gods. We have to remember that they're only a few generations away from essentially what is the Roman explanation for the creation of the universe. And so you only have a few divine beings coming into existence. You're going to find very close family ties. But of course, as population expands, you find a little bit more variety in the genetic bloodline. But that's just not how it works in the very beginning of beginnings. So I don't know if that might make you feel better or worse about all of this, but there you go. Now, getting back to the infidelity, as I said, like his Greek counterpart Zeus, Jupiter did not take his vows to Juno particularly seriously, and he was notorious for having affairs. Now, the interesting thing about Juno is that she was not as obsessed with punishing Jupiter's lovers and illegitimate children as Hera was Zeus's, but she was frequently in opposition to them, and she did lash out from time to time, but most often when her real nastiness came out, it was actually towards one of Zeus's mistresses, which is understandable. If you're the wife and you discover your husband has a mistress, you're not going to make the mistress your best bud. Now, a decent sort of person obviously would not blame any children that came from that union because the children didn't get a vote. They're not responsible for who their parents are or the circumstances of their conception. But again, it's not that you would be cultivating close relationships with, any of that. So I think this paints Juno in a more sympathetic light than Hera is. And I think it also demonstrates that the Roman conception of this goddess exercised a little bit more restraint and was a little bit more clear-headed about exactly who was deserving of antagonism. So that was just an interesting detail that struck me. So let's talk about cause and effect, because the myths regarding Jupiter's infidelities and their consequences, it does serve as a lesson for us, whether we're married or single, but particularly for people who are married. Because if the king of the Roman gods cannot get away with something, then neither are us mere mortals. And also these stories, it illustrates how destructive disloyalty in marriage is and how it sows the seeds for hardship and even tragedy, because you've got to remember a lot of these divine and semi-divine children of Zeus's, they had a lot of tragedy in their lives. Many of them came to ends at very early ages. When you set things in motion in dishonorable circumstances, it's very difficult to turn that around. And when you are the adult, it is really up to you to rein yourself in and think about the consequences of your conduct, and to think about how things might turn out, particularly for people who are the innocents in the situation. So it's a lot to think about, and I think it's one of the reasons why I don't think it's particularly healthy for when people do make excuses for infidelity, or when people say, "Oh well, perhaps people just need to be very open and be polyamorous, and that won't cause any problems." And like, yeah, well, people who've been attempting that, uh, since time immemorial, there have always been problems with that. You're not going to escape difficulties, no matter what your marital relationships are. However, the more people who are involved in that marriage, the more complicated things are. You're not going to be able to actually have the proper sense of loyalty and devotion. You're not going to be attuned yourself to them, if you have more than one spouse, or someone who is essentially functioning in the same role as a spouse. So I guess that tells you, where I fall on debates about relationship dynamics. Anyway, I see the tales of Jupiter and Juno together to be very cautionary. And I think it also illustrates that oaths and vows really don't have much power when the heart who made that vow has no desire to live up to it. And people who are unsuited to each other, they will inevitably act badly. It's just a question of how it manifests and how deranged or toxic or abusive it might become. But there's always going to be some bad behavior, even if people keep it at a minimum, or they just say, okay, this is not going the direction it should, so let's, think about maybe perhaps going our separate ways. Even then, that's not going to be a great thing. And choosing a marriage mate, that's pretty much the most important and serious decision in your life. And it's a process that really should be treated with more respect. And it should be much more focused upon the character of the person. I am really horrified by a lot of the discourse that I see going on public and on social media regarding relations between men and women and marriage and everything else. What you have are the fruits of people being encouraged to act badly for several generations on in. And I don't know how to put it more plainly without getting completely derailed into that whole debate. But I am horrified by the way people view each other. I am horrified by there's so much fear that was instilled in people before even they got involved in their first romantic relationship in their life, whether that ended in marriage or not. I am very disturbed by the tendency for both men and women to see the opposite sex as inherently predatory, as though that is the default option, and it's not just the failure of someone's character or the failure of someone to have ever been taught anything decent. I'm very, very bothered by people who are just saying, oh, well, this is this kind of nastiness. This, oh, they just want your resources, or oh, they just want you because you're pretty. And that, it's so superficial. I don't like how contractual and legalistic people are talking about their relationships. And I really, really do not like the overwhelming focus upon, the financial arrangements of it. Here, let me take it from an elder millennial. When I was 19, we had 9/11. And after that terrorist attack, the economy was in some trouble. Then we had the big blow up of 2008. And then there was COVID. And of course, we were in a nasty cycle of inflation now. And, in all likely, there's going to be a lot of financial upheaval for the rest of my life. There are times when money comes, there are times when money goes. And what I have really learned is it's not about how much or how little you have, it's how do you manage money. And it's important to, when you are going into a marriage, to have a sense of how you're going to arrange such matters together. How are you going to manage finances together? Now, in all probability, one person is probably going to be a little bit better with managing money than the other. And it's important to sometimes to trust, saying, okay, I think you know what you're doing. I think this is, you said this is the prudent thing to do, and you've presented a good argument, so I'm going to cooperate with you. That's much more important, how you manage these things. And as far as beauty and everything else, I mean, assuming you don't die young, because of injury or illness, the reality is that as time goes on, No one is as pretty as they used to be. And even though men have that irritating effect of sometimes aging like wine, at the end of the day, the years do take their toll on them. And sooner or later, we all lose our looks. So if people are having these relationships and going into marriages based upon little more than that, then they have doomed themselves to failure. People are sowing the seeds for their own marital failures because they are not looking at character. They are not looking about how you actually go through life with someone, and they are not thinking about how to function as a team. They're only thinking about how to protect their assets, if things go sour. Well, you're going to make things go sour if you go into a marriage with an attitude like that. So, shall we move on, dears? That was a bit of a tirade. I wasn't quite planning on this one. And and I did want to include, a divine marriage that did not go well in our little series during May, because most of the marriages that I'm bringing to our attention, there are examples of things that worked out well, or of gods and goddesses who were well suited, how they could come together as a team, and that's really what I want to focus on. But I wanted to throw this one into the mix because it shows that sometimes things are not going to work out, and how you choose to deal with that is going to be very revealing of your character, and how you handle that will ultimately determine how the rest of your life goes. So lots of food for thought. Let me know what you think about this in the comments below, or send me an email at brigantiablackbird@protonmail.com. Love to hear from you. And yeah, that's what I've got for you this week. Next week we will be talking about Hades and Persephone. So I do hope you will be back for that. And then after that, it will be June, and we will have a different theme for Pagan Tales. So that does it for now. Have a good rest of your Monday, and I'll see you guys later. Bye.